Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar today. Excuse me. Today we're going to be talking about Sage Intacct for healthcare. And we're going to get started in just a minute. I'm watching the little ticker of attendees on here continue to ratchet up. So we're going to wait about 60 seconds and then we'll get started. Thank you. Okay, I think everybody's just about here. As you can see from our title, we're going to be talking about next-gen cloud financials for healthcare providers, specifically Sage Intacct. Sage Intacct is the only mid-market, cloud-native, HIPAA-compliant healthcare accounting solution. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what makes it distinctive and why it matters, and hopefully why you should learn more about it. So before we get started, a little housekeeping. We're going to go 45 to 60 minutes, depending on how quickly we get through the material. For sure, we'll be done within the hour that we asked for on your calendar. Since this is a webinar, I can't hear you. So if you have questions or comments or anything that you'd like to say about anything I'm covering here, or if there's something in particular that you'd like to, that you're hoping that I'll cover, please use the questions dialog that's built right into your GoToWebinar control panel. What that will do is that will notify me that there's a question, and I can either answer it on the spot or I'll get to it at the end. But I encourage you to ask questions. I encourage you to, try to stump me, whatever it is that you want to do to try to keep this interactive. That helps me make sure that I'm on track. All right, so let me introduce myself. My name is Tom Thornton. I'm the practice director at Net at Work for Sage Intacct, as well as the healthcare finance industry lead. We partner with MGMA and other industry groups. My background is accounting. So I think based on the registration list, I think most of you are involved in the finance function, at least directly, if not indirectly. I've been working around small to medium-sized business accounting solutions for lots of different types of organizations, but many of whom are for-profit and nonprofit healthcare providers. I've been working with Net at Work for the last couple of years to help them with their mission to help organizations like yours digitally transform and to embrace the next generation of back office business application technologies. So that's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about a couple of terms that may be new to you. One, if you've been to any of our other healthcare webinars we've done, you've heard us talk about this concept of a digital operations platform. And a digital operations platform is different than ERP or accounting systems in that it's a bigger and broader concept. And it's a different way of thinking about your back office systems architecture. Next-gen ERP is part of that. So the accounting system that you're using for your financial management and for your day-to-day bookkeeping and your financial reporting and all those things, that has evolved too. And it's part of a digital operations platform, but they're not exactly the same thing. And I'll talk more about that in a second. I will talk about why we're recommending Sage Intacct to specifically to healthcare organizations and providers because of some things that they bring to the market that alternatives don't seem to have done exactly the same way. And so we'll talk about what makes it distinctive and why that maybe should matter to you. And we'll take a look at the system as well. So starting off with the strange term, digital operations platform. What is it and why does it matter? So first of all, Forrester, a research group, kind of coined the term a few years ago. And they were analyzing the failings of traditional client server ERP in what they call the digital economy, which is where we are today in 2023. And many of these systems, some of which you may be using today, are these server-based software. It's a single tenant, meaning you have your own copy of the software. You're responsible for either maintaining it or paying somebody else to maintain it for you. It has to be upgraded. It has to, and you're kind of locked into the system that's been created for you by the publisher. They identified these 7 attributes of what distinguishes a digital operations platform from that legacy architecture. And first and foremost is rapid deployment. So if we talk about rapid deployment, really what it means is that, do I have to go through a big exercise of figuring out, finding a server or a hosting provider to host it? Do I have to worry about system requirements? Do I have to go through an installation process? Is there a ton of IT work necessary to enable us to start using the system? In a digital operations platform, that should be nearly instantaneous. It's like provisioning a new Gmail account. It needs to be that fast. Ease of interoperability is another thing. I've been in the industry long enough to know that most people wanted to avoid the word integration because it was either impossible or expensive. And in any case, it was difficult. Upgrades are a thing that, for those of us who've been around for a while, knew that those were always a cause for concern and anxiety because they sometimes didn't go well. And they inevitably resulted in downtime or people working over a weekend to make sure that that happened in a way that didn't disrupt day-to-day operations. We have a lot of buzz in the marketplace about AI and machine learning. And these new platforms that meet this criteria for a digital operations platform have AI and machine learning built directly into the solution to augment your experience and to take some of the burden off of you that would otherwise be manual. Adaptability is important as well. We need to make sure that the system can be configured to match your way of thinking about your organization and how you operate and how you measure success. And you need to be able to tell. And so having the ability native to the platform to understand performance, to be able to produce meaningful, useful reports that describe what's actually happening in your business, both operationally and financially, is important. And then finally, the experience has to be positive for everybody involved. So the folks in the finance office, the folks that interact with the finance office that may be accessing aspects of the system, it all needs to be easy to use. It needs to be modern. It needs to be something that makes sense. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about this DOP concept. I mentioned it was a few years ago, Forrester claimed it. Most of the legacy ERP systems, they are the exact opposite of everything I just described. They are slow, evolve slowly. So if you may be using a system today that maybe feels an awful lot like it did 5 or 10 years ago. It hasn't been enhanced a lot. You may only be getting updates for compatibility and security, but not a lot of new features. They don't have any AR or machine learning. Performing lots of tasks may be very complex, particularly reporting, and it may just, unfortunately, barely be checking the box on compliance for you. And so, once again, it's really important to understand that this is not acceptable in 2023 in this digital age that we're in. Organizations need to be more competitive, and that includes in the way that they view their back office and the role of finance in supporting decision making and making sure that you're efficiently using resources. So when we talk about what makes a digital operations platform, this diagram is a characterization of a typical back office application infrastructure for a healthcare organization. You're going to have an accounting system. You're going to have a clinical system. You may have a CRM or some other tracking systems that are related to those. You may have a payroll and HR system or a budgeting and planning system. It doesn't matter what's in the bubbles, really. It's the important thing is that you know that you've got these bubbles. And these bubbles are shaped, a little bit like a cross-section of a silo. And I'll use that term quite a bit today because this seems to be the epidemic of afflicting healthcare organizations today. They've got these systems, and the systems individually for their design purpose may be competent at what they're doing, but they all exist in this solar system of disconnectedness. And so when we talk about a digital operations platform, we do think it's important that people focus on acquiring the application platforms that are the best for the organization based on your size, vector, specialty, all those things that you do. You want to make sure that you have the right accounting system, the right clinical system, the right payroll and HR system based on who you are, not based on what some vendor thinks that you ought to use. The thing that's also important is that those systems need to be extensible. They need to have the ability to be augmented to where you're not dependent on the publisher of that system for extending the functionality. So we talked about adaptability and interoperability. It's really important that you be able to augment those systems with point applications. So in the context of an accounting system, you need to be able to go out and potentially augment that with an AR automation platform for maybe providing a customer portal or things like that. In addition to those specialist solutions that bolt on, you need to be able to see data across these systems and to be able to see some context. If all I have is financial data in my accounting system and I have all my clinical data and other operational data in other systems and they never meet each other, then I don't have meaningful context for the performance of the organization. So it's really important that there be a mechanism for pulling it all together. And that mechanism is typically, for the organizations we work with, is what they call an integration platform as a service. And there are lots of different services out there, and we have one we recommend, but it doesn't really matter which one. The idea is that we need to be able to have a mechanism for automating data flows between these systems in a secure way, in a way that keeps you compliant, but that allows that data to flow some other way than through an export to a spreadsheet and some human being manipulating it and reformatting it and building a giant workbook for leadership once a year. This is what we see every day talking to organizations, is that there's this tremendous disconnect because nobody's ever been able to get the enabling technology in place to tie it all together. And that's really what a digital operations platform is. So a couple of the main advantages of this, if you're working with those, we're going to be talking about Intacct today, but one of the main advantages of these SaaS digital operation platform solutions is that if they meet all 7 of those criteria that I was talking about earlier, first of all, they get deployed a lot faster. They're updated more frequently. Those updates are not disruptive. They happen automatically. It's kind of like, I'll use the Gmail analogy again. Nobody ever worries about when the next Gmail update is coming because it happens all the time and it never stops working. And it's kind of the same way in this context. Those innovations come faster. Once again, with Intacct, innovations are coming continuously, but they have 4 major releases a year. In the old client-server software world where I grew up, if you talked about 4 releases in a year, that sounded like a nightmare because that was a tremendous amount of IT effort, downtime, and risk each time one of those updates was applied. The other important thing too is that it talks here in the quote about the one version nature of SaaS. Sage Intacct and other SaaS solutions like it are what they call multi-tenant applications, meaning there's a single version of the software that all users are accessing in a secure, compartmentalized way. And what that means is that every time a new enhancement is deployed, it's deployed to every user. Anytime there's a defect that gets resolved, it gets fixed for every customer at the same time. If you have 8,000 individual installations of your software out there in the wild and there's a defect and you have to put out a fix, that's 8,000 instances of that have to get patched in order for that defect to be addressed. That's very expensive, and it takes away from the innovation because so much money is going into support. So once again, this is an important kind of difference in the way of thinking about how the technology is supporting your back office, because it's a different kind of technology. It's deployed a different way. It provides value in new, innovative ways, and it's like I say in the title here, it's kind of a sea change in the way that we think about back office technology. So what does this mean for you? So once again, if you're working in a next gen finance office, we want to get away from IT headaches. I talk to IT leaders just about every day who are saying, we don't want to have to worry about servers. We don't want to have to worry about upgrades. That's not how we add value as an IT team. That's cost for us that we would rather not have. What they want is that if they can consume a product like Sage Intacct as a service and trust that all those things are going to happen and it be very predictable, then that's a huge step forward. Having the systems working together, so you have a clinical system or something similar in your organization where you've got transactions and you've got operational or clinical data that provides context for those transactions. And then you've got other financial results and cost information being tracked in your finance system, and you've got personnel costs coming out of your payroll and HR system. If they're all siloed and not talking to each other, then the human being has to get involved to try to tie all that together, which once again reduces the frequency, reduces the timeliness, and as that timeliness goes away, it reduces the value of the information. We talked about AI and machine learning. This is something that's becoming more prevalent. I'll show you a couple of examples here later in the meeting, but it's really important to understand that this is not something that's going to go away. And I think the smart folks are going to recognize that AI and machine learning is actually going to change the way we work in a positive way, because what AI and machine learning are optimized to do is essentially busy work. They're optimized to go out there and say, hey, help me reconcile this, help me catch mistakes, help me enter this transaction. And those are things that are valuable, but they're also time consuming. And that allows us to free up our time to do higher level work. Once again, the systems need to serve you. You can't be the slave to your system, having to do a bunch of things manually because they're not working well or working well together. All right, so let me talk a little bit about, I've hinted about a couple of things, but I do want to talk about what's important about Sage and Sage Intacct in particular for healthcare organizations. It does matter which platform that you use. And one thing I'll point out about Sage Intacct is that Sage Intacct is a finance solution. So it's one bubble in that diagram that I showed you earlier. It's not the entire ecosystem, but it's designed to be that finance foundation in that ecosystem. And it checks all 7 of the boxes that I listed off for you as far as what is a digital operations platform. A little bit about Sage Intacct at a high level. First of all, it is a native cloud multi-tenant architecture from its first line of code back more than 20 years ago. It brings some very important features, including a multi-dimensional chart of accounts that allows you to break down all of the activity flowing through your system at the level of granularity that you need to truly understand the performance of the organization. It gives you the ability through its native reporting and analytics platform to be able to measure and report and present that information in a way that is useful and meaningful and timely. And very importantly, in a healthcare context, it has the native integration tools that make it possible for it to work easily in that DOP ecosystem, whether it's through the Intacct marketplace products that plug in automatically, or whether it's through web services and integrating with other applications in a very unique way that may exist in your organization's ecosystem. But importantly, it's extremely modern, it's extremely easy to use, and it's built by accountants for accountants, and has features and functionality that just naturally make sense to folks who come from a finance background. Much more business user oriented, much less IT oriented in the way that it's operated. 2 important things I want to point out about Intacct. First of all, it's the only mid-market cloud accounting software that is HIPAA compliant. So everybody on this call is concerned about PHI and other compliance aspects of their systems and processes. And so not only can Sage Intacct claim that they have achieved the certification of HIPAA compliance, but they're also willing to sign a BAA with you. So if you are, from a compliance aspect, concerned about the potential exposure of PHI in your Sage Intacct system, this is something that you can get covered under a BAA. And Sage Intacct has all of the necessary audit components built into the system to make sure that compliance is maintained. There's also been additional industry validation. HFMA, or the Healthcare Financial Management Association, has done an evaluation of Sage Intacct, and it's the only mid-market accounting solution that has achieved that peer-reviewed designation with them. So once again, this is something that is widely used in the healthcare marketplace, and Sage has made the investments necessary to make sure that it is not only a good fit from a functionality standpoint, but that fit has been validated and certified. I want to talk about some functionality in Sage Intacct as well that's maybe relevant to some of you on this webinar. First of all, I'd mentioned dimensions. Dimensions are kind of like, if you think about your chart of accounts in your accounting software today, for some of you, you have the concept of segments. And for segments mean different things in different accounting packages, but if you use Sage 100 or Sage 300, for instance, a segment is one of the placeholders in a string account where the first 3 digits may represent something, the next 4 digits maybe represent something, but the account code itself might be 9 or 13 characters long. If you're on MIP, which I know some of you are, then you know what segments are. They're a little bit different. They're kind of like dimensions in MIP. So this will not be unfamiliar to you when you look at Intacct. But the important thing is that you need to have the dimensionality in your chart of accounts to be able to capture your financial activity so that you can analyze it at that level of granularity. So if you need to break it down by location, by specialty, by practice, or down to even the procedure or patient level, you need to have that dimensionality to be able to understand the true cost of delivering a service or how different aspects of your practice are performing. Dimensions are what make that happen in Sage Intacct. Another thing I mentioned earlier that's super important is the importance of the context of that financial activity. So being able to bring in clinical or operational results that can sit side by side with those financial results so that you can understand not just the dollars and cents or debits and credits of what happened during the period, but dollars and cents for what? You know, how many patients did we serve, or how many procedures did we perform, or how many residents did we have during that period, or how many patients served, or encounters, or whatever operational statistic is important to you to provide context for those financial results. That can all be captured within the Sage Intacct system and reported on side by side with the financial results. This is really important for people who are starting to adapt to new alternate payment models like value-based care models and things like that, so that you can understand, maybe I need to track hospital readmissions for a particular cohort of patients or things like that. What if I could embed that in a dashboard side by side with other activity related to that same set of services? Allocations are another thing that's an important native function within Sage Intacct. Being able to create automation around the allocation of indirect costs and other things like that you may need to do in order to understand the true cost of delivery of service, to be able to allocate it down. If we perform a particular procedure, you have direct costs, but you also have other costs associated with that are may need to be broken down in different ways. And having the automation to have those allocations happen automatically without somebody having to do an offline calculation in a spreadsheet and a manual journal entry can really improve the timeliness and accuracy of that information. Another trend that we're seeing in the industry is that there's a lot of roll-up going on out there. A lot of specialty groups are becoming multi-specialty groups. A lot of clinics are becoming multi-location clinics, and in many cases resulting in the need for multi-entity accounting. And so what we see is that there's a lot of demand for the ability to track activity within those different entities and across those entities, to be able to track those intercompany transactions and have automation of the intercompany do-to-do-froms, the ability to do the consolidations in different ways depending on how you want to roll it up, and to be able to do easily eliminations where that's necessary. So once again, native to the Sage Intacct platform is multi-entity functionality and the ability to optionally manage consolidations across those entities if you need to do a more formal consolidation rather than just a roll-up. A few more things about Intacct from a functionality standpoint. Integration, we talked about how important that is. I'm going to elaborate on that in a minute, but being able to easily integrate with other essential systems that are part of that back office digital operations platform ecosystem, right? So everybody who's a provider has a clinical system, an EMR. Everybody pays their employees and probably has a payroll package that they're having to get information into your ledgers from. You may have a budgeting and planning platform. You may have other operational systems that are part of that ecosystem. Getting that information flowing automatically, getting it off the finance staff person's desk that's responsible for exporting and importing and reformatting and building pivot tables in Excel in order to get the data to where it's usable. That can all be automatic, and the tools are out there, and we help people every day make that automated data flows instead of manual data flows. We'll look at reporting and dashboards in detail here in a second, but it's really important that you be able to get the right information in front of the right people in the right way. And so being able to get that information, whether it's reports, dashboards, or whatever that information is for your executive leadership, for your leaders at the operational level, even down to the physician level, so they can understand how their area of the practice is performing. This is something that is a real win for many of the healthcare organizations that we're serving today. Finally, a question we get a lot is that, especially as organizations grow, you may have multiple locations, but you may want to centralize purchasing and inventory management. You may want to warehouse supplies and other items as part of this. And so Sage Intacct does provide a native purchasing and procurement platform with inventory tracking that can help to, once again, get all of this in one place and make it easier for you to manage across your enterprise. I always talk about this when I'm talking about Intacct, regardless of the context, but it's super important to understand that this is, as far as next-gen ERP products are concerned, Sage Intacct is really pushing the envelope in terms of innovation. AI-driven functions like GL outlier detection and AP automation for automatic invoice ingestion. I'll show you an example of that here in a minute. But these are things that are really revolutionizing the way that finance teams are working. Same thing on the other side, as we're talking about reconciliations of banks and credit cards, having rules-based automation around how information is being consumed from your banking partners, so that you're not wasting a lot of time on bank reconciliations and credit card reconciliations, that those transactions are being matched automatically, that they're getting coded accurately based on rules and machine learning that's occurring behind the scenes, so that you're not having to go through and code and key everything yourself. That reporting, once again, all of being able to bring in all of the relevant information across your enterprise and report on that in the same set of reports and dashboards is very, very important. And I'd be remiss if I wasn't talking about a mobile experience. So many of your users, particularly those who are not part of finance, but who consume data, who need to participate in workflow, they don't want to have to go to their computer to do that. They want to be able to do that on their phone or tablet. And that's something that Sage Intacct is doing natively. Anything that has a browser and an internet connection can potentially be an Intacct client. A lot of the work that we do at Network is integration. So when we talk about that integration ecosystem, we partner with a company called DataBlend, but there's lots of tools out there like it that do similar things. We like DataBlend because it's very cost effective compared to competitors, but the basic idea of what it does is allows you to take any data from any source and create an automated data flow. And you can have as many different data workflows as you need to be able to push or pull data, to be able to have that data be transformed as needed, to make it sure it's in the right format, to make sure you're pulling the right amount of data to create conditions and rules about how that data is treated. It's basically a no-code or low-code platform to make that happen automatically. It leverages Sage Intacct's Web Services API as well as the other systems that have Web Services API to make that happen automatically. But it doesn't have to be an API-enabled application. You might have an old system that doesn't have APIs, but it does have a database. It can connect directly at the database level. It may be that you can't get to the database, but it can dump a file out into a folder. As long as that file is accessible, it can treat that as a data source to bring data in automatically into your Sage Intacct system. So once again, there's tons of new options. Integration is not a dirty word anymore. Integration is something that's actually cost effective and can pay for itself many times over very quickly because of the amount of time it's saving you. In the Intacct ecosystem, there's literally hundreds of applications that like I said earlier, you can just plug them in, minimal configuration, they work together. And this is not industry specific, but there's just tons of examples on this slide of software packages that are out there that you can use with Sage Intacct pretty much out of the box with minimal configuration. And the idea here is leveraging those integration tools. And these vendors have gone to the trouble of saying they want their products to work easily with Sage Intacct. So they've pre-built these integrations, had them validated, got listed in the Intacct marketplace. And they're things that you can subscribe to very easily. Whether you're a very small, single specialty practice or nonprofit health center or whatever it is, Sage Intacct is designed to scale from very small to very large organizations. So even if you're a very small 1 or 2 person finance office, or you're a very big multi-location, multi-entity, multi-specialty provider, Sage Intacct has the capacity to scale with you. The usability flexes with the scalability as well. So if you're a small organization needing a modest set of features, the system optimizes itself for you. If you're a very large organization needing multi-currency, multi-entity consolidations, all that kind of stuff, the system has the capacity to manage massive amounts of transaction volume. I'm not going to go through these numbers with you, but you can see on the screen that it has the ability to scale up to very, very large organizations. I'm obviously a partisan, and I care, and firmly believe that Sage Intacct is a great product. But I just want you to know that you should do your due diligence. Go out there, look around. Sage Intacct is the first and only preferred provider of the AICPA for financial applications. They know a thing or two about accounting, I hear, and they've been a preferred provider for more than a decade, the only preferred provider. G2 Crowd, which is a big reputation platform out there in the business application space, something like 5 years running, Sage Intacct has been #1. And customer satisfaction, I encourage you to go check that out, read some of the actual user reviews that are there. And then finally, Intacct is routinely in that top right quadrant with Gartner and the other industry analysts who look at this market, who point out that Sage Intacct is really on the vanguard in terms of vision when it comes to delivering financial applications in the cloud. All right, so I appreciate you bearing with me through the slides there, but I think there's a lot of really important points I wanted to make before we got in and just started poking around in the software. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to get out of the slides and I'm going to move over into a web browser. And so what you're looking at on your screen right now is an example of a Sage Intacct dashboard. And this dashboard is completely custom. This is not something that's out of the box, although there are out of the box dashboards delivered. But the important thing is that with this dashboard, I'm able to tailor it to myself or to the user that I'm building it for, so that they or myself, that I see the information that I want to see, that I need to see in order to understand how my business is performing or what I need to pay attention to. In this particular dashboard, there's a lot of indicators on here. I want to take you through a few of the mechanics of what we're looking at here. First of all, up here at the top, you can see what are called performance cards. And these are different measures or KPIs that you want to look at that are meaningful to you. And you're not limited in any way as to what they can contain, just so long as the information is somehow in the Intacct system. It's really important that you're able to be able to slice and dice the information at the level that you want. So anything that you can report on, you can get down to a single value and you can present it in a performance card. You can see also in this performance card that you have the ability to have comparative variance information incorporated right into the performance card, and you can also put conditional indicators on here as to whether it's a positive or negative thing. The nice thing about this is that it's also something you can drill down on. So I can actually click into these and I can look into the GL detail saying, how did I get to that 615,000? Well, here's all the transactions that hit the ledgers on those days. So being able to do this directly from my dashboard is a really important thing. And it helps me not only understand what the big number is, which is what my KPI is, but where did it come from? What are the transactions? What if it is a frowny face and I want to know why it's a frowny face? I just start clicking through and I can find out. A couple other things I want to point out to you is there's an example here of one that's reporting on a non-financial data. So I'm apparently feeding data in from another system where I'm keeping track of my occupancy, and I'm able to look at this and be able to see that non-financial information presented the same way. I'll show you a few more in a minute, but the idea is that not only can it show both financial and non-financial information in a dashboard, but it can do calculations and computations based on those two things together. So we don't have a ton of time, so I'm not going to spend any more time on performance cards, but just understand that you can build dashboards that contain any combination of information with any number of performance cards that are relevant for whoever it is that you're building the dashboard for. As we look down further, you'll see some other things that are fairly common in dashboards, charts and graphs representing information. So I can see my performance by location in this case. I can be tracking my EBITDA over time. I can look at my operating expenses by departments. You can see all those things that we're able to characterize in these charts and graphs. But right here in the middle, you'll see that there's actually a full P&L staring me in the face, and it's actually fairly rich in the way that it's presented here. So I have the ability to come in and look at it, and if you're guessing that the blue letters are drillable, you're absolutely right. So if I wanted to come in here and say, gosh, that's very interesting, I want to look at this, what's this $150 in telecommunications? Obviously, it's the smallest number on the financial statement, so I've got to zone in on that. But I'm going to check out and see what that is. Just like with that performance card, I'm able to drill into that, and I can see this is came over from the time and expense application. It's actually an expense report that resulted in this $150 charge. And if I want to drill further into that, I can go back and see the actual expense report transaction where that was dropped in. And it turns out that there's even some supporting documentation on here I can look at in the form of this fake invoice I just pulled up here. But the idea is that in your system, the system has the ability to capture all of these different kinds of transactions, including the supporting documentation for that transaction as part of how all this stuff works together. And I have the ability to do my analysis of all this directly from dashboards and dashboard reports that I see here. So once again, this is one example of a dashboard. Now I could come over and I could look at a different dashboard, and in this case, I have a different one that's a little bit more controller focused. On this particular dashboard, looks like I've got that same exact financial report right in the center, but I've got different performance cards in this case. This is more accounting focused, but it has some other dashboard components I want to point out to you. First of all, the dashboards can also include checklists. So for instance, if I come in and drill into this, I can actually look at one of these checklists. The system has a work management platform in the form of checklists that allow you to customize, in this case, a month and close process, create the assignments, create the calendar, who's responsible for, and then track progress towards the completion of the process. So whether it's a month-end close or a quarterly compliance reporting period or whatever it happens to be, month-end, year-end, quarter-end, you can build those workflows into the system, assign responsibilities for different tasks related to your finance function. One other thing I'll point out to you on here is down here on the bottom right is that you can see that there is workflow throughout the system. So this workflow is customizable. So you can assign approval workflows for every aspect of AP and purchasing. You can have an approval workflow around journal entries even. So if you have a staff accountant that's responsible for, in this case, let's look at one. If I look at my journal entry approvals, I might want to, in this case, looks like Frankie did a payroll journal entry. And I want to look at that before I approve it. So I can bring that up. I can look at the entry, and this is a dummy entry. It looks like it's an inter-entity transaction. But in any case, I could come in here and I can decide if I want to approve or decline it. If I decline it, I can come in and I can send Frankie a comment saying, hey, I need you to fix something on this before we post it. But the idea is that this workflow exists throughout the system. You can customize it. You can designate different approvers based on different contexts. And you have the ability to make sure that that information is all captured in the audit trail of every transaction. You can go in and look and see what is it that's happening, where did the transaction come from, who approved it, and whatnot. I'm not going to show it to you, but the system also has the ability to enforce budget thresholds throughout the system, especially for those of you who are not-for-profit organizations. You may care a lot about this. You may want to have whoever is your budget administrator or controller be notified in the event that you have a transaction that gets processed that causes you or would cause you to go into an over budget situation in any bucket. And so the system has the same, kind of validation technology to go through, not only to make sure that it gets approved by the right person, but also if it's going to throw you into a negative budget situation. All right, I want to talk a little bit about reporting because this is something that I find to be a big pain point in a lot of organizations. So I'm going to take you into what's called the Report Center. And the Report Center in Sage Intacct is kind of just like a centralized hub for getting to different kinds of reports. The Report Center includes every kind of report. So you can see that there's financial reports and every kind of subledger report and things like that related to the different module applications that make up Sage Intacct. The system will come with dozens of pre-configured reports that you can then tailor to your preference. You don't have to start from scratch. It has tons of fully usable reports that start with, but in my experience, you're going to tailor your chart of accounts a particular way and you're going to want to tweak it a little bit. The good news is you don't have to start from scratch. I have certain reports that I've favorited here because I think that I want to focus on these because they are, I think, relevant for this audience. So for example, I'm going to take you into one version of a P&L that we mocked up in this database. And what you can see across the top here is that I've got my different entities that I've set up in my Sage Intacct system set up as columns in this report. The report writer allows me to very easily take my actual results and break it out based on any dimension of the system, whether it's entities, departments, locations, or whatever you choose to set up as dimensions in your Sage Intacct system. I can look at that information and I can see it broken out in whatever form I would like. So this layout that you see in terms of the P&L format here is something that you control and that you can adjust as you need. But one thing I want to point out to you is down here at the bottom is that in the same financial report for each location, I can bring in that non-financial information. So if I have data coming from my clinical or other operational systems that I can match up based on dimension and period with this financial results, then I can incorporate that into my financial reports, and I can do calculations based on that in that same report. So I can do, once again, a ratio and or basic math computations to say, well, what is that? How many, what's my occupancy rate or whatever other metric I would like to see illustrated that will give meaning and context to the information to whoever's consuming this report. There's one other cool thing happening on this report I'll point out to you. It does have, for the UX Excel gurus out there, it has what they call spark lines as well. So if you want to see a visualization of the trend for a period of time, you can also have that as a visual on the report. I didn't talk about it before, but we'll talk more about formatting and presentation in a second here. Let's look at another thing that we want to look at here. So if I want to look at some non-financial data, first of all, this is another example of that same sort of thing, right? Is I can come in here and I can look at, computations based on services and patient days and revenue per patient day, and the same thing for different categories of expenses. These might be things that you're calculating from time to time, but for most people who don't have this information either readily available in the report writer in their clinical system, or they need to be able to incorporate other cost information that's not present there, then it's often in spreadsheets that you're doing these kinds of calculations. By being able to automate the data flow of that context, non-financial information over into the Sage Intacct system, it allows us to build interactive reports like these that will allow us to analyze this information and see it all in one place. All right, let me show you one more. And this one's, I think it's cool because any of you who have to prepare reports for stakeholders outside your organization and deliver those reports, there's a lot of cases where there's information that you feel like you have to put on the email ahead of time because you know they're going to have a question about it. All the financial reports in Sage Intacct allow you to add notations so that as you present those reports, and this is a live report, this isn't a printed report, this is something that's being presented either through a dashboard or through a shared report. You can add your own notations to it so that whoever the consumer of the report is can understand why that number is what it is, or any other context you want to add to the report for that. You can also see here that this is a report that is using the conditional formatting that's native to the Intacct report writer. So you can choose from a variety of different conditional formatting styles and set your thresholds for what equals good, bad, or indifferent. I do also want to point out that with any report in the system, while we encourage our clients to make data and other information available on a self-serve basis through dashboards and reports that your stakeholders access directly, some people still prefer to distribute reports. And in Sage Intacct, report scheduling and distribution is native to the platform, part of the report writer. So I can schedule this report to go out at a particular interval or upon close of the month or whatever it is that I want to use as a trigger for that. And it can send it as a PDF or as an Excel attachment. When I do export this to Excel, I do want to point out that the formatting that is part of the report. So let me drag this over onto my screen so you can see it. But this report is just like you saw it on screen there, including all of the notes come right with it out into Excel along with a timestamp. And that allows you to do whatever other fit and finish, pixel perfect formatting you want to do in the system to get it looking exactly the way you want it. But it's what we find with most of our clients is that both the finance team and their consumers outside of finance prefer interacting directly with reports because that does enable them to go in and understand, okay, well, wait a second, what is this number? Where did that come from? Assuming you give them permission to drill down, they can drill down and actually see the transactions that make up those balances, get all the way down to the original debits and credits and transactions, as well as the supporting document if it exists on those transactions. Okay, so just a few examples of reports and what you can do in the system. I also do want to mention that for those of you that are multi-entity, multi-specialty practices that do need to transact within individual entities but report across entities, this is something that, once again, the entity management within Sage Intacct allows us to not only report across, but it also allows you to easily manage and automate intercompany due to, due froms. So you can use reports like this one to understand exactly where your intercompany due to and due from balances are across your different entities, and to understand what's going to be necessary to true all that up as part of your close process or however you're choosing to handle that. But once again, the system is, like I said earlier, optimized for very diverse organizations. So if you're currently in an acquisition mode or part of a healthcare provider organization that is growing through merging and or opening new locations, and whether those are legal entities or just different entities from a reporting standpoint, the system can allow you to separate those operations and automate intercompany or inter-entity transactions and do an instant roll-up at any time. And if you need to do a formal consolidation, the consolidation tools are available to manage consolidations in just about any imaginable configuration, whether that's partial ownerships or if you have to do intercompany eliminations, creating an eliminations entity and handling all that. All right, so one more thing I want to show you. I mentioned earlier some of the AI and machine learning that's in the system. I'm going to show you one of those, but I want to make sure that we talk about both. So first of all, if I go into my setup here for Sage Intacct, one of the things I can turn on is what they call AI machine learning. And AI machine learning is the tool where the system starts helping you to detect when transactions that are unusual are hitting the system. And so when I turn this on, what it can do, and I'm going to put my own email address in here. It's not secret. You can email me anytime you want. Is that first of all, what it does is it turns it on. It means it's going to start monitoring the data that's flowing through the system. And then there's also an option where you can say flag and stop transactions that seem unusual. And so an example might be if somebody accidentally codes a large transaction to the wrong location or to the wrong specialty or whatever it happens to be in your practice, and it is 10 times larger than anything that's ever been posted there before. The GL outlier detection is going to catch that. And if you turn on the GL approval option, what it'll do is it'll notify me in this case, and I will be encouraged to go review it and approve it before it can then be applied in the ledgers. And this is something that's being enhanced, but it's something that also has to learn. So when you turn on the data service, you won't immediately start getting notifications. It's going to analyze your past data, but it's also going to watch your patterns as you go. And this is really why it's AI and machine learning and not just a formula. It is going to look at the data, evaluate new data in the context of the past data, and the thresholds for what it considers to be an outlier may move over time if you're a growing organization or things like that. That's the smart aspect of it. It's going to go through and it's going to manage those things. All right, the thing I am going to show you in action is accounts payable automation. So in accounts payable, I'm assuming everybody on the call today understands accounts payable and how it works. And in a traditional accounts payable system, I have the ability in Sage Intacct, just like you would in maybe your accounting system today, to come in and add a new AP invoice whenever I want to. I can put the date on it. I can decide which of my vendors this is going to, and it's automatically going to populate some information for me. I need to put a bill number on this. And all this top level information. Another thing that's kind of cool about this is that if I have some supporting documentation, and I think in this case I do, so let's just say over here I've got a copy of this invoice right here. I can just drag and drop it onto the screen. It's automatically going to attach it for me. And then I can come down here and I can code that to put the amount in, I code it to the right GL account. This is where you're first kind of seeing what dimensions are, right? You can see that I've got different components of my financial reporting structure that I can assign independently on each debit and credit I'm putting in the system. So I can choose my departments, I can choose my locations, my funds. I've changed database, by the way, so that's why the terminology is a little bit different here. This isn't healthcare specific. But the important thing is that I'm doing a traditional accounts payable thing here, and I'm entering it in, and I'm manually attaching the copy of the invoice, and I'm going to code it and save it or submit it for approval by my AP manager. That's the old way. And the 2023 way in Sage Intacct is that you can use their AI-fueled AP automation tool. And so what that means is that instead of entering that same thing that I just attached by dragging and dropping, what I can do is I can upload it. So I can say, okay, well, first of all, where do I want this to go? And then I can browse to the file that I want to upload, if I can find it. There it is. And I've got this invoice here. And then I can decide whether or not I want it to take all the detail from that bill, which is, wow, that sounds, how do they know that it might be more than one line? But yeah, I can tell it whether or not I want it to analyze it and roll it up into a summary line, or do I want it in detail based on how the vendor presented it on the invoice. And I'll go ahead and say all lines on amounts, and I can say create bills. And so what'll happen then is that I can refresh my feed here, and you'll see that right now it's in a state of analyzing that file, and it's in bill upload, and I'm guessing it's going to say, oh, there's a problem here. There's an exception. And the reason there's an exception, if I view it, is that the bill is a duplicate of an existing bill. So let me jump back out of here. And I can look down here and say, oh, yep, there it is. Apparently I tested this earlier, and I also created a duplicate that time. But let's go ahead and take a look at that bill so that we can understand what's going on. So when this bill came in, first of all, there's an attachment on it, right? So that's the file I uploaded. And if I come in here and look at that attachment, sure enough, I have an invoice that was sent to me by Fernandez LLP, and it's got a bunch of lines on it. If I look over here in the body of what was uploaded, I've got a bunch of lines on this as well. And I think I can hide that so we can read that a little bit better. Let me do it this way. But all of the detail and all of the coding from this was pulled in based on my invoice history with this particular vendor. All of the descriptions from each of those lines is in the memo column. It was even smart enough to come back and down here at the bottom where they broke out their tax and put that on a separate line for me. So let's go back and look at that again. Let's look at it this way. I'm gonna have to zoom in. My eyes aren't that good. But yeah, I had $455 worth of sales tax down here to get to the grand total of $56.55. There's my $455 that's noted as a tax entry on here. Now, this may not all be perfect, and it may not be perfect every time, but it gets more perfect over time because it learns based on how you correct it, how to understand the information it sees next time if you get a future invoice from this. Anything that comes in through the AP automation import process will automatically be a draft. Nothing gets posted automatically. But what it does do is it allows you to get 50 to 75% of the effort associated with processing AP invoices completely automated. One last thing I would say about it too is that the upload process that we just went through, I'm going to jump out of here, is only one way to do this. So your AP staff, it's going to be fairly time consuming for them, even just to do that one step. Let me get a copy of that invoice. It can be a PDF. It could be a body of an email. As long as it's a document that can be analyzed through OCR and the AI engine, it can read it and determine what that information is and do its best effort to generate a draft invoice for you. But in addition to this upload process, there's also a mechanism for you to have your vendors email those invoices directly to a special mailbox that's associated with your Intacct instance that will allow that to come directly into this bills feed as draft invoices for you to review. And that way you're not having to go through that manual uploads step. So we're right at time. I know that I promised we would finish on time. So let me switch back here for a second. If you're using older technology, if you haven't embraced the idea of a digital operations platform and looking at your back office application and clinical system as an integrated ecosystem, then I think maybe you should. First of all, it's going to make your life a lot easier. You need to get these things talking to each other. You need to make sure that the system is matching how you think about the performance of your organization. You need to have the right reporting, and you need to make sure that it's going to be sustainable long term. You don't want to have something that continues to get more and more dated. We do have some resources for you out on the Net at Work website. I would encourage you to go check out if you haven't already. We did a webinar last week with Forrester, who is our industry analyst with focus on the healthcare industry. That recording is out on our website. I also did a podcast with our friends at MGMA on activity-based costing. If that's something that you're considering or attempting to do in your current system, I encourage you to check that out. You'll get a copy of these slides, and they're hyperlinked. Either that or you can go to our website. You can find links on our healthcare industry page. If you want to talk to me about your current situation, if there's anything I can help you with, I encourage you to contact me. My information's right there on the screen for you. Someone from Net at Work will be following up with you to get you a copy of the slides and to get your feedback on the session. I encourage you to let them know if you'd like to take a closer look at Intacct and how it might work for you. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.